What are some NSFW secrets about the military? When I checked into Fort Bragg in 2011, the very first thing I was told in the in-processing brief was "Welcome to Fort Bragg. We have the most male-on-male rapes and sexual assaults in the nation." The very first thing they told me. Suicides are at times covered up. And sometimes rape. A beat-up face and being shot in the head from your non-dominant hand is classified as a suicide. Edit. Actually, I'm not going to not say her name. She was Lavina Johnson, and the fact that this has happened without any repercussion speaks volumes of what the U.S. Army in particular will cover up, and shamelessly so. It's fucking disgusting that this has happened and too few know her name and her story. Further reading and sources enclosed. Link. Also Vanessa Guillen. She was raped, murdered, chopped up, and burned on American soil by American soldiers, and the Army worked overtime to cover it up while her family refused to give up, demanding answers and making it a public issue all the way to Washington, D.C. to get answers and pass reforms. Yeah. My brother shot himself a week after coming home from Afghanistan, and officially it was an accidental discharge of a service weapon. Which I guess was nice, as my family still got his military compensation. He was one of the first and of many suicides for on that war. I believe they have far outpaced combat losses now. They do this so the family still gets life insurance and various compensation. It's well known, but still kind of obvious when you look at the situation. Yeah, I found my brother's body at his apartment and it was no accident. They gave him the full military funeral at Camp Pendleton too. At least his immediate chain of command took care of him and his family instead of classifying it as a suicide. He was a victim of the war, same as if he'd been shot by the enemy, so it's good they treated him accordingly. I had a relative who was killed in a plane crash during World War II. We were just told he was killed in a training mission. Turns out that he was one of a few soldiers on an experimental plane and the pilot was going through a divorce, so he put the plane down. My family didn't know what really happened until the early 2000s. Well after his parents passed away. You have to show your asshole to one of the oldest doctors on the planet before they let you join. I think it is a commitment thing. When I did this, one of the questions on his list was, "Do you drink?" I said no, my family has a bad history with alcohol. Dude sat his clipboard aside and had a good 10-minute heart-to-heart with me about his own family's struggles and how abstaining was really the best path in our situation. Then picked his clipboard back up and jumped right into, "Okay, I need to see your anus." I remember my old crusty doc told me to drop trousers and bend over. As soon as I bent over he said, "Oh wow." Thankfully he was referring to the scars I had from a pilonidal cyst surgery healing well. But for a moment I was petrified, thinking I had a brown booger hanging from my butt bush. You have a beautiful way with words. So my buddy and I joined together. We went to MEPS the same day. He had a cyst on his tailbone that he never knew about. Because of that he didn't go to basic with me, but went a couple weeks later after he had the cyst removed. On the way back home from the MEPS station I mentioned how weird that was. He said, "How do you think I felt when I'm bent over with my ass spread open and I hear the old dude go HHHHHMMMMM after a really long pause? I almost had to pull over, I was laughing so hard." Calling a product military grade is not the compliment that most think it is. Military grade is synonymous with cheapest that met the specifications. The specifications are not high. I don't know how much a secret it is, but if you're in the military or married to the military, the odds of you being cheated on sexually, or being the cheater, increase drastically compared to your civilian peers. That is classified. Go to Discord. The amount of waste, fraud and abuse is exponentially more than you think. It still blows my mind that we just shoot all our extra ammo at the end of range day, to make sure we get the same amount of ammo next time. Billions have probably been wasted on that. And that's a small thing. The whole "we need to use X up so we don't get shorted when we need it next time" is such an insane level of bad management. I don't know if this qualifies as NSFW or is unique to the military. But when you are required to provide a urine sample, it must be witnessed by another service member. So on any given day, since it's random, you might be called to pee into a cup while another person stares at your junk. I once got called for urinalysis on a day when I had terrible diarrhea. The observer had to watch me shit just in case I was also able to pee in the cup. I was dehydrated, so it took a long time to finally pee. In addition to watching me shit liquid, this dude had to look at my dick 3 or 4 different times. It was a bad day for both of us. Edit. Thanks for the awards. Never thought my top comment would be about shitting during urinalysis. People be fucking. Like, all the time. Deployment wives, husbands are a thing. Also, people play a lot of ridiculous pranks and pull a lot of silly stunts. On my last deployment we had a phantom shitter. Just some guy, or girl, they never got found out, who would shit in random spaces. I had a friend who was a really dark-skinned black dude. At night, when we were only running red lights, he'd hide under the stairs to the boat locker right in front of the door to Sonar 1 and wait until someone was nearly face to face with him, and then he'd smile. All you'd see is this perfect set of red teeth all disembodied like the Cheshire Cat. Freaked me the fuck out first time he got me with it. One time we were in pretty rough seas and the ship was rocking pretty hard. Now, on the main deck there's only 3 hallways that run across the ship. The longest one was midship and was where our chow line was. People were sliding up and down that P-way with the rocking of the ship. It was pretty wild. What we sonar techs would do is get in our trunk. Imagine an elevator shaft with a ladder that connects 4 levels. And time a jump so that when the ship crested a wave and if you timed it right you could jump up to the next room. My LPO made it like 3 floors once. If the ship has a swim call, meaning everyone can swim in the ocean while at sea, there'd be a couple of people with rifles on shark watch. If there is an ice cream social for no reason you're going to get bad news. Except for when they finally got Bin Laden. Edit. Forgot to add that I went to electronics school with a guy whose last name was Sample. So he was literally Seaman Sample. We had female soldiers committing their own prostitution. They had a code and everything. If a girl at the coffee shop was wearing PTs and a pink PT belt she was down to fuck for money. One or more of these girls contracted a disease and next thing you know there is a base-wide epidemic, and I still remember a commissioned doctor coming into the break area screaming, "If I have to look at one more fucking dirty dick I'm quitting, fuck it." Apparently straight Marines do gayer shit than people who are actually gay. Marines are the gayest straight guys you'll meet. Sailors are the straightest gay people you'll meet. A friend of mine in the Special Forces told me since they are out in the field a lot, they get plenty of ticks. And while you can inspect yourself fairly good, you can't inspect everything, so they pair up and spread their cheeks, and your mate has to stare into your anus to check you for ticks in there. Not very glamorous. Holy fuck, I didn't realize I could have a relevant story about this. I used to serve with this super fat dude. Let's call him John. John never got promoted in the National Guard because he was extremely overweight. Towards the end of his contract, he was knowledgeable but he still couldn't pass height and weight standards, and so was a PFC, and everyone dismissed him. I was new and knew John had knowledge, so I stuck with him. One day in the field, the dude says, "Hey man, can you do me a solid?" And then proceeded an event in which he pulled down half his trousers and spread his fat ass a bit while I checked for ticks, in the dark, with a flashlight. So like I really had to look. Was it a mole? Dirt? Shit? No. Indeed, John had a fucking tick smack in the middle of his ass line between 2 of the fattest ass cheeks a man could have. Edit. I hate you guys for making me remember this event, but no, I didn't remove it for him. I think either another dude did with a knife or John himself contorted his fat self into somehow removing the tick from the inside of his ass crack. We didn't have a medic on the team to remove it. The amount of unreported injuries to doc or to command, thus leading to lifelong issues. On the other hand, if you do go to doc about an issue, you'll be berated and told you're lying about an issue to get out of duty. PT. Was ignored and told I was lying about back, sciatic issues for months by doc. Jumped chain of command, went to my captain, had an MRI, x-rays of my lower back, and a month later had a microdiscectomy of my L5. Damage was done, medically ineligible to re-enlist, 7 years later, and have to get a spinal fusion due to severe disc degeneration and chronic sciatic pain and permanent nerve damage. Sometimes the guy that administers the drug test is the same one that you get the drugs from. It's literally just high school with guns. The food boxes that come in literally say for prison and military use only. My husband was watching a documentary with people in prison and was like, hey, we have the same blankets on the ship. No ear protection on the range? Just shove your fingers in your ears. Also, safety squints work if you're fast enough. Swingers exist on every single base in the world. In Sigonella they would use different boxes of detergent in the windows to show what they were into and what age range they were looking for. Patrolling the housing area became much more interesting when you see who lives in the houses and what they're into. You have a higher chance of shooting yourself than someone else. The IT is far less cutting edge than you think. What are you talking about? There's not a virus alive that could target the Korean War-era machinery I used while I was in. Loots of chlamydia. If you join the military you will be affected by suicide. We had 3 during training, 1 on the boat. 1 I had to tackle in my office because he was slashing his wrists. Then you get out and it keeps happening. I've lost 8 shipmates in the last 7 years after I got out. It's nuts. The amount of people who get sick and tired of being in the service who will go out and do some drug or another to get kicked out. During our Iraq, Afghanistan years, you wouldn't believe how many people would purposely piss hot or females would intentionally get pregnant to get out of going. The amount of unreported rapes, both on base in peacetime, and also raping civilians as a war crime. It's seen throughout history. A buddy of mine and I prevented a rape before we even finished basic fucking training in the army. It was co-ed basic, and at the end you all get a weekend pass, so of course we all get adjoining hotel rooms and party. Toward the end of the night, I walked into one of the bedrooms and I can see one of the women on the floor between 2 dudes, her pants are undone, and she looked terrified. Now, these dudes are both way bigger than me, but I can't let this happen, so I go grab my buddy, who is a brick house, and tell him what's going on. He barges in there, and says to her, "Come on, we're leaving right now." She immediately got up and ran to us. Then we took her to the other room where I sat in the bathroom with her while she cried her eyes out for several hours. She asked us not to report it, though. So we didn't. Out of the blue years later I got a letter from her thanking me for what I did that night, and I still have it over 20 years later. I hope you're doing well, wherever you are, Andrea.